Enoch Olinga was born on June 24, 1926, as the second son to Samuson Okadikina and Isiza Iyamatai in Soroti County, Uganda. His parents were devout Christians and members of the native Anglican Church of Uganda. He was also a member of the Aitsat tribe, of the Aitkok or Iraraka clan from the Tiso region of the northeastern part of Uganda. In 1927, Enoch's family moved to the village of Tilling, where he received his schooling locally and at the nearby town of Ngora. He later attended high school in Bale. In 1941, he joined the British Army Education Corps and went to Nairobi in Kenya. He later transferred to the East African King's Rifles Corps in Southeast Asia, visiting Burma, Bangladesh, then East Pakistan, Ceylon, and India. At the age of 20, he returned to Uganda and joined the Government Department of Public Relations and Welfare, stationed in Soroti and Bale. He wrote 2 books in Aitsat, his native language, that assisted the governmental education department in the Tiso district. Around 1950, he moved to Kampala. Enoch was now married, with children. He was developing personal problems and becoming disillusioned with life. The government service that employed him, despite his long record of service and noted capacities, dismissed him because of alcoholism. In 1951, Enoch came into contact with the Baha'i faith through Ali Nakjavani, the son-in-law of the Bananis, Persian Baha'i pioneers. Enoch Olinga was the third Ugandan and the first of the Tiso tribe to declare his belief in Baha'u'llah. He had become a close friend of Ali and regularly was in attendance at Baha'i meetings at the Banani home. On account of his remarkable transformation in conduct, his wife soon became a Baha'i. Then many others followed, and by Ridvan 1952, the first of several local spiritual assemblies in Uganda were formed. Shortly afterward, Enoch returned to his native village of Tilling to spread the glad tidings of Baha'u'llah. In a few weeks, the mass enrollments begun. The following year, 9 more assemblies were formed. In 1953, the first of 4 intercontinental conferences was held in Kampala. Shogi Effendi hailed with a joyous heart the large number of new believers. The next year, Enoch responded to the appeal for pioneers to open up new territories and became a Knight of Baha'u'llah. He was also elected to the National Spiritual Assembly of Northwest Africa. That same year, Enoch made a precarious, overland journey to what was then known as Cameroon, becoming the first to open that country to the faith, holding this pioneer post for 10 years. One of the outstanding believers who found the faith through the teaching work of Enoch Olinga was David Tani, the first believer in the entire Cameroon province, later becoming a Knight of Baha'u'llah for French Togoland. Discretion often had to be used when teaching and making travel plans in order to avoid arousing the suspicions of the local governmental authorities, for persons of diverse backgrounds and ancestry were often suspected of covert activities. It was during this time that Enoch was bestowed the title of Abul Futu, translated as Father of Victories, by Shogi Effendi. During this time, Enoch wrote his first letter to Shogi Effendi, describing the outcome of the teaching work and asked that he may be permitted to stay at his pioneering post. In 1956, Enoch was elected chairman of the newly formed National Spiritual Assembly of Northwest Africa, headquartered in Tunis. In the span of 3 years, 29 of the 33 Virgin Territories were opened to the faith. During February 1957, with the assistance of Dr. Hugo Jachari, Enoch was, with some difficulty, granted a current passport and visa to visit the Guardian in Haifa, and arrived in the Holy Land on February 3rd, staying for 10 days. The love showered upon him by Shogi Effendi affected him for the rest of his life. He returned to West Africa enkindled with the love of Baha'u'llah and made arrangements to move his family. The teaching work in the British territories of West Africa continued. It was on a visit to Uganda, October 2, 1957, When he was notified through a cable received by Mr. Benani that he was, along with John Roberts and William Sears, elevated to the rank of Hand of the Cause of God. 1 month later, he received the word of the guardian's passing. Enoch was unable to attend Shoghi Effendi's funeral in London, but was in attendance for the first conclave of the Hands in Baji on November 18, 1957. Ruhi Khanum recalls one of his most endearing qualities was his great joyous, consuming, and contagious laugh. He attended the laying of the foundation stone of the Mother Temple of Africa at Kampala on February 14, 1957. He worked at the World Center until 1963. He returned to live in East Africa and found his relationship with his first wife, Unica, going from bad to worse. They separated and divorced. As was the custom there at the time, Enoch had 2 wives. After the divorce, he went to Nairobi with his second wife, Elizabeth, and all of his children, facing numerous difficulties during the dark days after the passing of the guardian. Finally, he returned to live in his native village of Tilling in Tiso, Uganda, and built a house. Though the loving guidance of the Universal House of Justice, he once again began to travel teach for the faith. In the spring of 1963, he was chosen to be chairman of the opening session of the First Baha'i World Congress, held in London. Enoch met heads of state during his many visits to different countries, including one with the Dalai Lama in Dharamsala, India, during October 1968. Over many years of service, often accompanied by his wife Elizabeth, he traveled and stimulated the Baha'is and met with high officials. He would often bring the faith before public and media. After Mr. Benani died, Enoch purchased his home in Kampala. Additional travels after 1968 were extensive, including a tour of Upper West Africa in 1969 and later that same year, South America, Central America, passing through the United States, then the Solomon Islands, and Japan. In 1977, he represented the Universal House of Justice at the International Teaching Conference held in Brazil, and then attended the International Teaching Conference in Mexico, where the instructor of this deepening series was given the honor of meeting and conversing with him. He returned to Uganda that same year to help protect and preserve the Baha'i community there during a civil war. In September 1977, the Baha'i faith was banned in Uganda by the new dictatorial government headed by Idi Amin. All administrative institutions had to be closed. In March of the same year, Enoch was in a terrible automobile accident when his car was rammed and knocked down the side of a hill by a troop transport. He was subsequently robbed by the soldiers and left for dead. He commented that if it weren't for Baha'u'llah, he would have died in that accident. 2 days later, his son's body was kidnapped by soldiers. He arranged for his wife and youngest child to return to Tilling. The train they traveled on was strafed by bullets several different times, inflicting many casualties. However, they were not harmed. Body returned and Enoch promptly sent him and his brother Patrick on to Tilling to be reunited with their mother. He was too weak to make the journey himself because of the accident. Kampala was being heavily bombarded, and Enoch was persuaded to seek refuge on the temple property. He made his way there on foot, under extreme pain, struggling against the crowds of people trying to flee the city. That night, a fierce artillery battle raged around the temple where he spent the night in prayer. The next day, the temple still stood, undamaged. He soon returned to his house, finding it being looted. He was accused of being one of Idi Amin's men but somehow was able to convince the mob otherwise. He returned to the temple and assisted in its protection. Gradually, the conditions improved and the Universal House of Justice was able to appoint an interim administrative body to reorganize the Baha'i activities and properties. Enoch spent his days working at the Baha'i temple and assisting the administrative committee. He refurbished his home in Kampala and his family joined him there. It was on Sunday, September 16, 1979, 5 soldiers in unmarked uniforms knocked on the door. The houseboy recalled, at about 8:30, I heard someone shaking the gate to the compound and, looking through the window, saw 5 armed men walking towards the back door leading to the kitchen. They shouted open and banged on the door. Lenny opened the door, and there was a sound of shots. I fled over the fence to hide in the neighbor's bushes and remained there in terror all night. I wasn't able to see anything but heard shooting and other sounds going on for about 2 hours. At dawn, I ventured out of hiding and went to the house, seeing the body of Enoch lying in the courtyard and inside, all in an inner bedroom, the bodies of Elizabeth, Tahira, Lenny, and Body heaped on the floor where they had fallen when shot to death. Ruhi Khanum's heartbreaking poem, written shortly after Enoch's brutal murder, perhaps most aptly captures the grief and devastation felt throughout the world.
The sunlight is black. What raven wing covered my sun at noonday? In my mouth are the salt of tears. I cannot swallow so much salt. Blood is so beautiful. Blood is so pure. Why do the people let blood run in the street? So long it took to make this man noble and good. His mind and his soul expanded like sunlight at noonday. Why did you kill him? Are you pleased at this riddled shell? This mangle of bone and flesh? Did you think your deed in the dark was a bright light? Everything is pulsing, throbbing and throbbing. There is no answer. And the sunlight is black. Go, Enoch, go. Go to Musa on the hill. Go to your master. Go to your guardian. Go to the kingdom of light. But ask not of us, nor of your people, who have plucked a sin, big enough and dark enough, to blot out the noonday sun. Woe to Africa! Weep as you have not wept before. Weep on your knees. Weep your eyes blind. You have murdered Abu el-Futu. The Father of Victories is dead. At your hand, your jeweled crown, placed by God on your head, is rolled into the grave. Weep, weep, weep your heart away.
On September 24, 1979, Enoch Olinga was laid to rest in a burial plot near the temple, next to that of Musa Banani, his fellow hand of the cause of God. One was designated the spiritual conqueror of Africa, now joined by the Father of Victories. Tragic as his passing was, Enoch Olinga left behind a legacy for the continent of Africa, the effects of which are still felt today. He was particularly concerned with the education of children, and years after his passing, the Olinga Foundation was formed to promote universal basic education, the empowerment of junior youth, and to build the capacities needed to carry forward an ever-advancing civilization on the African continent.